This is Agnes in Fortitude Valley in Brisbane. From the outside, it is very understated. In fact, this sign is the only thing that tells you where it is. But that doesn't really matter when you have bookings 3 months in advance. Agnes is the latest venture from Tyron Simon, Bianca Marchi and Frank Lee, who've teamed up with Ben Williamson, ex-Gerrard's, to create a restaurant centred around wood-fired cooking, with 2 charcoal pits and a wood-fired oven. I caught up with Tyron Simon and Ben Williamson. Tyron, Ben, welcome. We're at Agnes, which is your latest and most anticipated restaurant. Its siblings, Same and Honto, are very, very successful, and and as well as long time ago. But what's your basic food philosophy behind the operation of Agnes?
I think as a group, what we've tried to do is create simple food that's delicious, not overly complicated, but food that you want to eat and you want to eat regularly. It's not necessarily special occasion food, it's food that you want to come and eat on a weekly basis.
Yep. And Agnes is obviously very different from your other restaurants. There's no stoves, no ovens, it's just all flame and smoke. How difficult is that? Why did you choose that form of cookery?
I think I'll step into this one, but it's look, there's 2 things. I think a more natural approach to cooking, which is something that we try to do for the produce, and not to mess with things too much and keep things as they are in their purest form. So I think cooking with wood just sort of ties into that aspect, and also it's just a fun way to cook, right? It's way more fun than turning on a gas stove and plugging something into a wall. So
I read somewhere that you had to develop a lot of the equipment yourself because it wasn't available off the shelf. Was that easy?
Yeah, it was surprisingly simple, yes. It took probably a bit of thought and a bit of forethought into how we were going to approach the hearths or the kitchen as it was. But we got really lucky. We met a great blacksmith that's very close to the city, about half an hour's drive south, and we started and engaged with him and started a relationship, and he sort of was willing enough to do some work and make some pieces that we could cook with that you can't buy off the shelf.
Right, so it makes you fairly unique. How difficult is it to create a varied menu when you've only got naked flame?
Really not as hard as you think. So again, it's just having that approach of you have a product that's beautiful in its own right. Mm-hmm. It's been cared for and curated for by the people the hands that came through to get before it gets to you. So it's just a very similar approach to that. What can we put this with that's going to complement it well? How's it going to work on the fire? The fire is quite a dry environment to cook with, so especially when you're working with fish, like some fish just aren't well suited to cooking on fire, as well as others are. Things with a good fat content. But that's really, you just apply that approach, and if it makes sense to cook it on flame, we'll do it. If it doesn't, we don't do it.
All right. Now, in the early parts of last year, when you planned to open, obviously you weren't able to open because you weren't allowed to seat people. You opened up a very successful pop-up bakery, which had long queues, producing wood-fired pastries, etc. Did you ever consider keeping that?
Yes.
Yes?
Well, the funny thing is with the bakery, it really was something out of necessity, and it was a passing comment I made to Ben when they were packing out this kitchen, which we were about to open 2 days later. I said, well, bakery. It was like, 5 days, we'll be ready. Which made it easier for me. I went about my business of not cooking food, and the team that Ben assembled was able to produce a very unique bakery for Brisbane. I think Brisbane's lucky it's got a lot of great bakeries, but the style that we're going to probably very much suited the kitchen, quite rustic and almost food from the old world. It wasn't modern pastries and French patisseries, it was very rustic in its approach, but it tasted delicious. My waistline could attest to that.
And obviously very popular because of the queues, and some of I believe some of them are still on the menu here. That I had that really nice dark bread that you've got, which almost has a treacly flavour to it. It's very, very interesting.
It was a great learning curve. I loved it.
And I was actually sad to see it go. I said, Ben, can we keep this bakery going for another month or 2 here? It was one of those things that I think was never intended, but the success that we achieved, I think it was a little bit right time and place. People weren't able to travel outside their homes, and you were able to go for the necessities, and it almost became a bit of a social outing, because as you got here, you'd walk up the line to say hello to all the people you knew, at socially acceptable distances apart, but it became something that was almost Brisbane's COVID experience by
Board.
Yes. and to be fair though, it gave us something to do as well.
Yep.
Instead of reading every news site, waiting for what we thought would be a 6-week exercise to be finished, we realised that it actually gave us focus, and it allowed our staff, front of house, our restaurant manager, our SOMs, our bar managers, they were selling pastries. It wasn't what they really wanted to be selling, but it gave them something to do, and that gave Ben's team, I guess, they were cooking not necessarily what they'd signed up for, but it was challenging and it was rewarding.
It was, yeah. I mean, we really had no choice, right? It was new business. There wasn't going to be any relief. We had to do something to keep it going. And it's just another hustle. Another hustle for another day.
And obviously it built anticipation for Agnes when it did open as a restaurant in around August last year, and you've been very popular ever since then with long queues. For someone who hasn't been, can you describe Agnes to me?
No, I think that's you, Tony. You're much more eloquent with your words than I am.
I think it's really is a return to cooking from yesteryear. It's simplicity, produce-driven, delicious cooking.
I think the other thing as well that it's, with this restaurant, it's the full package. The building that we chose in the beginning to fit out to make it had loads of character on its own. Sitting in here now, it feels old but new at the same time. It's got a soul to it, which lends itself well to the theatre and the kitchen with the open fires and the music and the good time and the lighting. I think it's the whole package coming together that makes it what it is. Yeah.
And potentially that time that we had when we were in here for the bakery, you'd see it during the day when we were selling, but you also saw it at night when Ben and his team were making breads in a tiny oven never meant for bakery productions. And you could take. We actually were very lucky. We got to sit in the restaurant for months before it opened and actually figure out things that we needed to add that made up what the restaurant is today. And I think in a way, besides the blessing of being able to stay open and sell bread, it allowed us to really make sure that when we did open the restaurant, things were exactly as we wanted and probably envisaged, and might have got lost in the shuffle of the madness of opening the restaurant.
Well, there's a lot of interest in opening restaurants. How would you best describe the food? Are people going to have more than just sort of smoky, burnt flavours?
Hopefully less of the burnt and more of the smoky, I think we would hope for. But look, I think the menu's pretty varied. And I think, when you're immersed in it all the time, as we are in the kitchen, you get attuned to it, and you sort of the smokiness falls to the background a little bit because your palate gets used to it and around it. But when you sit on the other end as a diner and you decompress, there's an element of smoke to everything, but it varies. Some things it's quite delicate, the starter, and then it ramps up, and then there's some dishes that are just a reset for it that can bring your palate back. Not everything is 100% smoked. Like, to say we're a smoked restaurant, I think would just be inaccurate. I think we're probably more a natural cooking restaurant. We're a barbecue restaurant, I guess, right? But the element of the wood, it's present in everything, but it's definitely not overpowering.
That is different pitches depending on the produce. And I think that was like with the seafood, if you had something which was lightly smoked, but you came across and it was really dominant, you probably lose some of the flavours of the fish, and that's where, once again, it's easy for me on the other end to get to taste it, but for Ben to make sure the pitches of smoke, the kisses are there without being too dominant in every dish.
And we try to offset those flavours so they're not aggressive and dominant.
But it's more than just barbecue, from my experience. I mean, you're cooking the vegetables there as well. You've got the nice cabbage dishes, and the batter itself too, which is lightly smoked. That's not what generally.
The modern Aussie barbecue as opposed to the American barbecue.
And I think actually the vegetable dishes on the menu are some of the absolute heroes.
Do you have a signature dish or a favourite?
That'd be Ty's ball I don't like that term much myself.
Well, as far as dishes, I think I look at dishes on like the carrots, Ben's carrots, which are, when people order, they're surprising. They're not warm, they're chilled. There's a lovely smoked labneh that go into the hint of that spice.
It's a simple dish that works well, I think. Lends itself well. People come back for the duck. We get a lot of. I think the customer probably dictates the signature dishes more than we do. And the duck's one of the most popular dishes that we have. We brine and age our ducks before we smoke them, and they get sort of hung up above the hearth and just slowly cooked, with the flames just licking away at the skin, for a solid 4-hour period, or 3.5 hour period.
Yeah, you have a reputation for being difficult to get into with a very long waiting list at times. How do you cope with regular customers and that sort of thing? Because can they have to book ahead a long way?
I think with that, I think in the moment, with the lengths that we're receiving, it also adds a lot of pressure onto our staff.
Yep.
Because understandably, if you've waited 3 months to get into a restaurant, your expectation builds as it gets closer.
Yep.
And that pressure is something that we're aware of, but it also means that for us, we have to, night in, night out, be perfect. We have to deliver on all the experiences, not just the food, not just the wine. It has to be the music, the service, all the elements that people have come and built anticipation for. And that's probably something that I think we're constantly reminded of, that we don't take it for granted. The customers in that 3 months could have dined somewhere else and crossed us off, so we do feel lucky to get to serve, to work in a full restaurant every night.
Yep.
And that's the expectation that we have for ourselves, is to deliver, because it might be someone's only time that they get to dine with us. We have to make sure that they walk away thinking it was a very special meal.
And the restaurant has 2 bars, upstairs and downstairs. Can people come to the bars without a booking into the restaurant?
Absolutely. Whilst we do hire them out for private functions, we do encourage regulars who, once they've dined, say, I want to come back, but I'm 3 months again.
Yep.
We always say, why don't you come to the bar? We've got a lot of our snacks and our starters on there.
Right.
It's actually a pretty nice way to dine. You can just graze and taste lots of different things versus having one of the cinctured ducks or steaks that are obviously quite large. You can come and still get the experience without having to wait the 3 months for the booking.
Okay.
Yeah, I think also like the pro tip would be, don't just stick to the online reservations. Pick up the phone, give it a call.
Yeah.
Shout out to Georgie in reservations. She does an amazing job, and she's probably going to hate me for saying this now. But it's usually that human element, and then much easier to get a call.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Agnes is wonderful, I know, and it's definitely worth a detour.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Agnes is an experience well worth waiting for. If you want to get in, you're going to have to plan ahead and book early, or you can be spontaneous and call by phone, as vacancies do pop up. It is worth getting there early and having a drink in the downstairs bar or up on the rooftop terrace. And if you can't get a reservation, you can sample some of the menu whilst having a drink at the bar. Agnes, most definitely worth a detour.